We are back with another Dune Imperium video. However, today is another strategy video, and I'm going to preface this video by saying that it is not a recipe for victory, and things depend on game state, leaders and matches, cards acquired from Imperial and T-Laxo row, intrigue, starting position. Dune has a lot of variables, so things can change fairly quickly, and the value of board spaces can change depending on your particular circumstances and the game state. However, in this video, I am going to explain my opinion and view on all the board spaces, starting with early game, which is what I'm classifying as round 1 to 2. Mid game is round 3 to 5, and late game is round 6 to 10. I made this video in the mindset that those are the rounds, so when I'm speaking on values, that is where I'm thinking of, as we are seeing more round 6 finishes, so I'm considering that as the late game now, and obviously round 7 is the usual end game anyways. So with that being said, we are going to start with the city spaces. So I'm going to go over the value of Arakeen, Carthag, Research for early game, as you don't see Siege in early game, but that would be mid game. And we're going to start talking about first Carthag and Arakeen. Carthag and Arakeen, these two spaces you will usually see be played to as second agent actions most of the time after people have played their faction access or have gone to Smuggle or perhaps Desert depending on leader. Carthag is more valuable in my opinion round 1 though than Arakeen, as you don't want to risk drawing your other faction access if your starting hand was one faction access, as that can mess up your round 2 plays. However, if maybe you did end up with 2 faction access round 1 and you weren't able to get them played, you could consider going Arakeen as second agent to draw a card so that you'll be able to shuffle a faction card back into your hand round 2. But in that scenario, you should have used Diblo instead of Seek Allies. That way there's 2 faction cards for you to be able to perhaps shuffle in to be that 5th card in the following round. There's also a scenario where you may draw all Desert access round 1 and say you were able to smuggle round 1 as player 2. You could Arakeen to hope for Desert access on the shuffle next round so that you can smuggle round 2. Otherwise, I would say Carthag is the city space I would like to go to in round 1 if my hand was bad or if I was blocked elsewhere. You could end up with a combat entry that could swing combat in your favor in that early game there, and you can decide on if you want to toss in 3 troops or not with that entry knowledge. Or maybe you top deck an endgame card, and that kind of dictates what your strategy might be for the rest of the game, such as if it was plans within plans, corner the market. Grand Conspiracy, however, this one kind of sucks, and I don't really say you should focus on it, as it is a grand quest in the end. So Carthag and Arakeen are both city spaces that offer strong utility in the early game, especially as second agent actions. While not as core to engine building and economy building as smuggling, full space, or wealth, these spaces play an important strategic role, either helping you with hand setup, combat positioning, or acting as a fallback option when other plays are blocked. And just to end this section here, I'm going to go over the bullet points that I have made here. So Carthag over Arakeen early. Carthag is usually preferred in round 1 due to the safer troop plus intrigue that you gain without risking a draw that could disrupt round 2 plays. Arakeen for draw fixing can be useful if you're trying to cycle back into needed access cards or take a gamble for next round setup, or perhaps gain persuasion for this round 1 reveal. Backup option, both are solid second agent plays when blocked elsewhere. Carthag can offer a hidden combat value with a lucky combat intrigue, maybe endgame intrigue as well, while Arakeen adds hand flexibility, persuasion gain, perhaps save hand for next round, depending on the access that you are reaching for. Alright, so let's move on to early game value of Research Station. We'll go through the points first. Research Station is rarely used in round 1 to 2 unless you're aiming for a big persuasion reveal for a specific Imperium card like Lady J. Even then, you are gambling and wasting resources if it doesn't work out. It can be kind of leader dependent play as well. Can be valuable early for leaders like Helena or Paul who benefit from strong card draw or Signet synergy, such as Helena going Still Suits into Research Station round 1 with Signaring to pull for that big card. But however, with Immortality added now, could be used to early cycle into 2 experimentation / research icon for players pursuing 3 specimen T-Laxo cards like the Stitch Horror or Unnatural Reflexes, Gola, things like that if you would like to do that. However, it is costly resource wise, but I mean cards like Stitch Horror are pretty game changing with their on playability effects, so it is an option for you early game to do. So with that all being said, round 1 to 2 you mostly aren't going to see someone go research unless it is a niche scenario such as the Helena with the Seek Allies to Still Suits into Research with Signet to pull for like the 6 on a Lady J. You could see Paul perhaps for big persuasion with Seek Allies into Still Suits into Research with the ring to draw 3. Otherwise, I mean, there is a play with the T-Laxo. Say you have 2 experimentations in hand and you're trying to get that 3rd cube in round 1, you could go Still Suits into Research and then you research icon into that 1 specimen and then you reveal your other 2 experiments, and now you have 3 to pull off Stitch Horror, or maybe you want Gold or something like that, but I think Stitch Horror is maybe the only one I would do that for. And in the scenario of the Helena or even Paul trying to pull for big persuasion, now with Immortality there is the Atomics, so I mean for Helena it's a little better because she can swipe that card off, But for Paul, it's going to be a little dangerous for you to do that with. At least with Helena, you can put the card to the side. Unless someone might predict you're trying to do that if they see Helena go Still Suits, but at the same time, they might just think you're trying to do the Conspire play. So it is, you could do whatever, but if you don't happen to hit that 6 or whatever card you're going for on that research, that is a lot of wasted resources, especially early game when your goal is trying to get that Swordmaster as fast as possible. Alright, so let's go over the bulletin points for mid-game value of all city spaces. So backup plan, city spaces are mid-game fallback plays, often used with your last agent to limit to combat or support a combat heavy strategy. Intrigue, edge, / save me / thirsty. Karthag is the strongest for potential combat intrigues, maybe endgame intrigues or something else that could help you along with your plays and strategies. Air King helps fix your hand, and Siege is for grabbing water when needed to set up other plays that require water. Utility or setup typically lower priority than going faction, shipping, or spice spots unless your deck or game plan demands otherwise. City spaces, mid-game is still, you're going to go there with your last agent. There's so many other things you want to be doing here in mid-game, like playing 2 factions. You want to maybe ship, go Lanzarad, grab spice. You're probably more focused on going elsewhere, and these city spaces are still the last thing you're probably going to do with your last agent as a means to maybe get involved in combat by limping in. Or if you went heavy into combat through, say, Hardy Warriors, Hayliner, you could go city space to put a little more pressure on in that conflict. I would say mid-game Air King becomes a save hand space, trying to draw yourself Persuasion for Spice Must Flow, or a high Persuasion cost card. Save your hand from it being terrible. Believe me, that's what it is for me most of the time when I have to go Air King first agent mid-game so I can play on my other 2 agents. I do think Karthag is probably a better spot to be going to, though, in mid-game compared to Air King or Siege. Obviously, it depends on your strategy that you're trying to go for, but Air King, I mean, maybe you do have a card you want to see for a reveal effect, or you do want to pull for Persuasion, or you're trying to save hand, yes. But Karthag, you can get an Intrigue and toss a troop. The Intrigue could be anything. It could help you for faction bumps, spice, troops, endgame, anything, right? So I think just, I don't know. I really like gambling, so I really like gambling on the Intrigues on Karthag. Now, obviously, if your strategy needs you to go Air King or Siege, then obviously, right, you're going to go there to do those things. And like mid-game, Siege, if you had no access to Still Suits but are still trying to set up a play where you need water, such as research or grabbing spice, or maybe you do want to get Hardy Warriors but your access is in the next hand, then you probably go Siege to get that water, so then next round you can set up for that Hardy Warriors or set up for that spice. However, I would say if Karthag and Air King is open, I would say those are higher priority if you have no need for that water, right? Now, mid-game for Research Station, I mean, mid-game you're going to Research Station to maybe draw for Spice Must Flow, gain that research icon to move you across the Tilaxu track of research. Maybe you need a good card from the Imperium, such as a Chom's Directorship, a Full Scale, a Lady J, or just Spice Must Flow. So you feel like going to Research Station is something that will help you get there. However, you do have to consider whatever you are picking up Imperium row-wise, you may only be seeing 1 to 2 times depending on your deck size. So do keep that in mind. Alright, so late game value of city spaces. Research Station, huge value for this spot late game, as to draw 2 to 3 cards, especially if you're at the end of the research track. You will get that 3rd card draw. To dig for combos or reveal cards or salvage weak hands. Air King, modest value increase for this card as a fallback draw space when research mentat selected reading are taken. Could help dig for a key card or persuasion. It is a gamble though. Siege drops in value, often in a desperation, deployment, or niche water grab for, say, Sayadina, Water of Life, Spice Tiebreaker to pick up Spice after that water grab. Rarely a priority. And Karthag holds steady value with 1 intrigue, can be clutched at late game. It could either be a combat, end game. Who knows? It could be Quid Pro, Strong Arm that you still have 1 agent remaining to go steal an alliance. Anything really can pop up on that Karthag intrigue. It's kind of crazy what can happen. Alright, so to go more in depth about that, Research Station value does shoot to the top. You'll see players setting up in previous rounds gaining water so they can hit research as a first move if others have 2 water, as well as depending on the position as a means to block others, but more importantly for yourself to be able to draw 2 cards, perhaps 3 if you have been playing your experimentation and getting those research icons throughout the match. And you're aiming to get a Spice Must Flow, maybe draw into some reveal type of cards you may have picked up along the way. Maybe you had a bad round 7 hand shuffle, which always happens to me for some reason, and you need research first agent move to save that hand and give you options to play. I also think the value of Air King goes up here at this point in the late game as people are trying to dig into their deck to try to gamble and grasp for the last straws of trying to get Spice Must Flow or that card that they have a reveal effect on, or just trying to save hand if other spaces are taken like Research Mentat Selective. Now when it comes to Siege late game, the value goes down tremendously at this point, as I hope that you've already set up earlier for water if you plan to do something with that water, such as research. Otherwise, this kind of becomes like a last resort deployment space, unless maybe your strategy involves getting water, as I said before with Sayadina, Water of Life, last ditch effort to gain spice into Great Flat or Haga for big spice tiebreaker or set up for a Hayliner if no one else had that spice, but I would think others would have already set up and thought ahead maybe. Otherwise, this is the least valuable space when it comes to city in late game. Okay, so that's my thoughts and opinions on city spaces. Spaces for early, mid, and late game. You guys let me know in the comments down below where your opinions may differ. Other thoughts, other things to add to the values of these spaces so other players can read the comment section and give them some more tips and help to get better at the game. Appreciate y'all for watching. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, leave a comment, consider becoming a channel member, and until next time guys, peace.